Hi, everybody. I'm Pete Christensen.
And I'm Coffee Brown.
Welcome to episode 14 of
Don't Die Dumb.
Before we get started today, I want to answer viewer mail. First, and I'm not going to mention your last name for your own privacy sakes. First of all, there's Vicky, who said that she liked another YouTube video where I acted like I'm having a seizure. That's
Okay.
Thank you, I think.
This is for you, Vicky.
And I want to remind anyone who's watching that on January 17th at 6:30 at Glory Bound Ministries on Manal in Albuquerque, we're having a premiere of a movie that Coffee's sister is
My
in.
sister is starring in it.
She's got the big scene at the end. And it's free, and there's an after party with the two words that rule my world, free food. But Vicky, thank you for the nice compliment.
And did we mention that my sister is starring in it?
Yes, well, I think we did.
Because I don't want them to
His sister, Sandy.
not know that.
Now to Lynn, who I think one of us may have been made a derogatory statement about cats. She said, cats are great companions. And you're right.
Oh, I was joking about cats wanting to kill us. I've had cats almost all my life. I'm a big fan of cats. And I love their independence. So that was entirely just a joke about the whole murder cat thing.
She's got a point, though. Cats are great for people. There's nothing wrong.
But I think if my cat had to choose between saving my life or chasing a mouse, I'm doomed.
Well, I might be forced if I had a choice. Also, she wanted to know if we've read the book Cosmic Banditos. It takes quantum physics into a real situation. Have you read that?
I have not read that book, but I have heard the title of it. So, Vicky, I'll try. Vicky, right? Or is that still Lynn?
That's Lynn.
Lynn, okay. So, Lynn, I'll try to follow up on that. That sounds interesting to me. By the way, just a quick flashback to that quantum discussion. I think a good summary of what I was trying to spit out would be quantum is unmatched for prediction, but has no explanatory power at our current state. All the stories about quantum are just stories, but its ability to predict is amazing.
I'm just glad we have a viewer that actually understands quantum physics. Now, Jerry said, what is the big deal about the wolves? They're overpopulated anyhow. Let me explain this. And Jerry got a good point. A lot of people think they are overpopulated. In Wisconsin, there are approximately 1,240 wolves. But what they do is they control rabbits, desert rats, and field mice, and other rodents. And the good thing about wolves, besides controlling that, is that they drive coyotes out of your area. And coyotes will come right up to your door. A wolf won't. You can live, and Jim Reeder from Milwaukee taught me this, who ran a wolf sanctuary. You can live 10 feet from a wolf and probably never see it. Now, in New Mexico, we have 126 wolves. And they are the Mexican gray wolf, which most of them are tiny. The largest one they've ever found is 90 pounds, and that was very rare, and they only found one. Most of them are tiny, and once again, they control rodents, and they're on the endangered species list. Now, in Colorado, where Lorena Handy Job in the theater Bobbitt made, and the Congress approved this, hunting wolves in Colorado. Do you know how many wolves there are in Colorado? 35.
So this overpopulation of wolves thing, let me just put that in scale for you. Humans weigh about the same as gray wolves do, in the 150-pound range. And there are 8 billion, well, more than that. We found out that count was low. So there's about 10 billion with a B, humans on the planet. And you're going, 1,500 wolves sounds like overpopulation to me. Do you own a mirror?
Yeah, put it in perspective if you can, please. And finally, Stan, who asked, why don't you concentrate on some local subjects? I don't know if it have a widespread appeal, but I'd be glad to do that. For instance, the soccer stadium in Albuquerque. They placed it near the Balloon Fiesta Museum because they have the room for it. But they wanted to put it downtown, and they wanted to put it in the rail yards. But all the people in the rail yards, even though a lot of the area is blighted, fought against it. And conservative radio here, KKOB, actually, Brandon Vogt, their announcer, lied. He said it was going to cost $100 million. It's going to cost $80 million, and $30 million is being put up by the team. But that scared people away. In Phoenix, where they put the baseball and football stadium downtown, which was blighted and crime-ridden, it's now a showplace. It's great. It's fun to hang out there again. We could have had that here, but instead it's out by the Balloon Museum, and guess what? All the people living near the Balloon Museum, they're now up in arms.
What are they upset about?
They're upset that that's moving into their area. There's going to be more traffic, less parking.
So it's a NIMBY thing.
Yeah.
Okay, fair enough. Actually, NIMBY is a good topic. We could talk about that one of these times. You had just recently told me a great story about the chili pepper drop on New Year's.
I love the chili pepper drop.
But the history of it.
Well, we had it here, and then they had it in Nob Hill near where the police station is. And they would get about 100 people to show up, and not a lot, but these were cold winters then. And people from Las Cruces bought our chili pepper, took it down there, and they have a chili pepper drop. Santa Fe saw it.
Those Las Crucians!
Yeah. And then Santa Fe copied it, and they have a chili pepper drop. Well, Zaz Hotel.
Our chili pepper drop.
Yeah. Zaz Hotel, which should be commended because on Central Avenue, they took an old hotel, completely refurbished it. It's a show place now. It's very nice. They had one this year, and they expected a few hundred people. There were hundreds and hundreds of people. Now, because it's their first time, I don't think they knew how to do it. I mean, it was great. It was lit up. It fell at the right time. Everything was great, but there was no countdown. People love a countdown.
Yeah. How could you do it without a countdown?
Well, you know why we love it? Because most of us can count backwards from 10. America, we're number one. Anyhow, they had no countdown. They had no music. They had one food stand, as far as I saw, and one area to get drinks. They closed them both down immediately at midnight, and people stood around going, okay, what are we doing
Now
here?
what?
But it's their first year. They'll get it down, and it would be nice to see the city get involved. They close Nob Hill down all the time anyhow. Close down the area, make a big deal out of it, and make sure that Zaz can keep it because they thought of doing it. But, yeah.
It should stay with Zaz. They should continue to get the credit for that.
But let's do this. Let's see if we can hit on one local subject a week.
Well, here's another one right now. Speaking of chili peppers, I think you should join with me in lobbying to change our license plate from New Mexico, land of entrapment, to New Mexico, where pain is a flavor. So these letters are
What's the matter with you?
These letters are the coolest thing in the world. If I got to direct where this podcast goes, and we're still finding our way, it would be a conversation. We don't want to tell you stuff. We want to engage in a conversation. And we don't have to agree on stuff. We'll disregard anything that's flaming. But comments that say, I think you're wrong, or comments that say you may not have known this, or let me add to that story, or I know something about this, bring me on your show, all that would be great. The more this becomes a conversation, at least I'm speaking for myself.
And I welcome criticism because that's the only way I'm getting more fan mail than him. Anyhow, now I'd like to start off by talking about Venezuela. People are saying Trump liberated Venezuela and he gave them freedom, and they're so happy. And the Venezuelans are happy here because they think they've been liberated from Maduro. Maduro was a tyrant. He tortured people. The average Venezuelan since he came into power has lost 20 pounds. There's no garbage pickup. The place is filthy. Some people are literally starving. And they have one of the largest oil reserves in the world. And they were all living good before he came to power. He stopped free elections. Machado was elected female president. But Trump didn't put her in power. He says she doesn't have the populace behind her. That's a lie. She was duly elected by the popular vote. Now he got rid of
Yeah,
Maduro.
but she's a woman.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's that.
She was duly elected. He got rid of Maduro, but he let Maduro's vice president take over. She's just as corrupt, and her cabinet just as corrupt and evil as he is. Shell and Mobile were both thrown out of that country. Now Trump's welcoming back in. So what was the deal here? The people in Venezuela did not go out and celebrate because they're afraid to go out, because the vice president and Maduro had hundreds and hundreds of motorcycle gangs with high-power weapons that are equivalent to ICE. They're death squads. They go around and just kidnap people, and you
Hang on
never
a
see them
second.
again.
I was right with you for a second there, and I want to stay on topic. But so far as I know, ICE isn't death squads yet. We should probably pull back an inch
Well,
from that.
let me say this. They've taken people, kidnapped them off the streets. Of the 63,000 people in Alligator Alcatraz, 31% have no records at all. Can you say that? That you've never gotten in trouble with the law your whole life? Of the ones who were sent to El Salvador, which will probably never get out, will probably die in prison,
Horribly.
62% have no criminal record. They have the bad luck of having olive skin.
You make a compelling case, sir. ICE squad is closer to death squads than I was. ICE operatives are closer to death squads than I was thinking. Also, the fact that they have irregular uniforms, cover their faces, don't do due process, don't show ID, and don't have any accountability means that we don't actually know how many of these ICE squads are vigilante squads. And the vigilantes probably are death squads, because what are they going to do with the people they round up? So, are there any vigilante squads? I don't know. Maybe not. Could be none. But in an environment where you can't tell the difference, it's hard to say that they wouldn't be tempted.
Now, getting back to Venezuela, before I was interrupted.
So rudely interrupted.
So, getting back to Venezuela. So the same power structure, evil, corrupt, torturistic people are in power. And Trump's not getting them out of power. And he's not putting the duly elected official in power. But Shell and Mobil get to go back in. And what's basically happened is what all dictators do when they take over a country. They get in bed with the criminals. That's what he's done. And you're not going to see money from this.
That's an excellent point to pause on. I'm ambivalent about Venezuela in a bunch of ways. We'll talk a little about that.
Yeah.
But the U.S. has a track record of putting dictators into power because they are friendly to U.S. interests. And Trump is already using quite a lot of that language. So are his representatives. The problem is a Venezuelan leader is responsible for Venezuela, not the U.S. Their loyalty should be to Venezuelans. Now, that can include partnerships with the U.S., and we should be looking for ways to work with Venezuela to our mutual benefit. But when we judge Venezuela or any leaders that we are supporting by how well they serve our interests rather than those of their own people, we've completely jumped the shark.
Now, Trump has not deposed any other dictators.
Yet.
Hungary, all these other places, China, North Korea, he embraces those dictators.
He's already said we have to do something about Mexico and Colombia. And Mexico is not a dictatorship. It has problems with corruption in government, but it's not anything like Venezuela or Colombia.
Yeah, this is not about stopping the drug flow. He pardoned a man that brought in 400 million tons of cocaine.
Yeah, he pardoned one of the biggest drug dealers in the world and also one of the biggest Bitcoin fraudsters in the world. I mean, his pattern of who he likes and who he doesn't like has nothing to do with traditional law and order or morality. It's all transactional for him.
If Trump had put Machado in power, I would say good, but he hasn't. He simply climbed in bed with the... And let me make this point very clear. I'm glad Maduro's out. This person was terrible to those people, and they're living in poverty while he lived like a king. But we've just given the keys to the kingdom to another crook.
So
now, you say you're ambivalent. Tell us why.
So I've spent a bunch of time playing catch up this morning, and it's clear that a lot of Venezuelan expatriates who left because they didn't like the regime.
Yeah.
They're pretty happy to see it change. Whether or not Venezuelans on average are happy about it is harder to determine. But Pete makes a good case, and I wouldn't be surprised if they are happy about it. So let's stipulate for a moment, this guy is a terrible person. He's a terrible dictator. He's terrible to his people. He's a bad, bad, bad man. We hate him, and he should go. He's bad for his people. He's bad for business. He's bad for America. He's bad for everything. And I think all of that is reasonably likely to be true. Nevertheless, stepping in and doing regime change in another country, first of all, we declared and won a war in a single day, and the president is supposed to go through Congress to do that. Now, this sock puppet Congress wouldn't have been much of an obstacle, but he is legally supposed to have gone to Congress before committing an act of war against another country. And the rest of the world is going, well, that's great. We didn't like that guy, but who's next on his list? And so we violated a lot of national laws. I mean, when I see a guy slap a woman, I have a strong urge to go up and punch him. But the reason that's not a good idea is because we have way too many people right now who think if I disapprove of someone, I should go up and punch them, right? As soon as we start saying, well, if they're bad, then it's okay to break the law, we don't have law anymore. And if Republicans have ever stood for anything, and I'm not sure they do, it would be law and order. Well, this isn't law and order. There is an international law and order for this kind of thing, and Trump has violated it egregiously and already pointed out that he has other targets on his list. And by the way, this podcast doesn't go back that far, but Pete can tell you that way back when Trump was first elected, I said as soon as his poll ratings drop, he'll start a war somewhere. Well, poll ratings just fell, and here he is in Venezuela. Do the math, right? Bush did the same thing. He started a second war when his poll ratings began to fall. It's a Republican strategy to start a war when they get in trouble because, hey, you can't get rid of us now. We're in the middle of a war. It's an emergency. No, it's not. It's a created emergency. Venezuela is no direct threat to us. So I think it might be a good thing in itself if you just look at it for what it is. But I think it's a harbinger of bad things that may almost immediately outweigh any good that we've done.
It can be argued that Netanyahu is dragging out the war in Gaza just so he can stay in power because he's already been convicted of fraud and several other charges. He's going to prison when this is over.
Classic strategy all over the world, part of what Putin was doing in Ukraine as well.
So I don't want to digress too much, but will this make people forget about the Epstein files?
Oh, his name isn't in the Epstein files, I know, because there's a bunch of black bars there where it would have been.
Ah, okay.
So we should start calling him President Redacted, by the way. But people have said we're unfair to maggots. And I do feel bad about criticizing people who wear swastikas and Ku Klux Klan hoods and Confederate flags and preach racism and sexism. I feel sorry that I can't see the world in an empathetic way to your perspective. But I would like to see conservatives come back into the political arena and reclaim patriotism and loyalty to the Constitution. So conservatives, if you're listening, this is your big chance and your last chance in your lifetime to step up and do the right thing. And you are way behind on this.
Well, I always hear people from the South tell me, well, you know, the Confederate flag is part of my heritage. Yeah, well, slaughtering Indians is part of my heritage.
Yeah, genocide is part of our heritage, too.
But I'm not going to regale it.
Yeah, it's not, actually, I'm not going to wave a genocide flag because we are all the products of genocide against Native Americans. And I wouldn't wave a Confederate flag. This is interesting, though. We think about African Americans like they're this invasive group that we've somehow got to get rid of, and they're trying to horn in on, they're trying to date our girls and eat in our restaurants and use our bathrooms. They were dragged kicking and screaming here. It's not like they came here, they didn't sneak over borders to get here, right? They were dragged here kicking and screaming. They built the early wealth of this nation and then were prevented from participating in it. And just recently, well, at the beginning of this term, Trump took down all the displays about African Americans and women in World War II, and Native Americans too, like the Code Talkers. Do you know why he had to take those down? Because there were African American and women and Native American heroes in World War II. Otherwise, those wouldn't have existed. Just recently, he took down memorials to African American soldiers in an American military graveyard in the Netherlands. And the Netherlands are like, what are you doing? Well, the reason he had to take those down is because there are African American heroes who died for this country both before and after this terrible treatment they're getting. They died for this country. And if they had not, we wouldn't have had to take down memorials to them. You don't have to take down memorials to people who don't exist. Which reminds me, I wonder if he's going to take down that Batman memorial. Well, anyway, back to you.
I don't think that we should get rid of destroy the statues and the sculptures of Confederates. I think they should be put in museums, but the plaques should be changed to say these were insurrectionists and they fought against democracy. Now, with that in mind, I don't think in Santa Fe and Taos in particular, they should get rid of the statues to Kit Carson. I know he followed Sheridan's rule, and Sheridan, he said the only good Indian is a dead Indian. That's where that quote comes from. He followed Sheridan's rule in decimating the Navajos. And the reason he did it was because the Pueblos were, for the most part, very peaceful farmers. The Navajos were raiders, and they took slaves. And after they attacked a Pueblo, they would attack the white ranchers and farmers near there. And what he did was he had to control the Navajos, and he was cruel to them. But he felt it was a last resort. Remember, he was married to a Native American woman, and most of the Native Americans really respected him and liked him. And I don't think he wanted to do that. I think you should leave the statues up, but change the plaque and tell more about him. He was a complex character and terribly divided and conflicted throughout his whole life because of that. But he felt if he could just stop the Navajos, and the problem was when the government took over the Navajos, they were terribly, terribly cruel to him. They eventually got home. When they saw Mount Taylor, as they would march back, they fell to their knees and chanted, "Beauty before us, beauty above us, beauty below us." Thank the spirits we're finally home. And I think we shouldn't deny a previous history by getting rid of these statues. They shouldn't be out in public. They should be in museums with different plaques. How do you feel about that?
Well, I'm going to go on a little bit of a tangent. You point out something really important, which is that these historical figures are way more complex than we want them to be. We need to stop trying to oversimplify everything we hear about and think about. Conservatives often are quite upset with progressives who they feel won't acknowledge anything good about the country. And that does fit with my experience. But progressives are often upset about conservatives who they feel won't acknowledge anything bad about our country. That also fits with my experience. The fact is that on the one hand, Jefferson had babies by one of his own slaves and then sold his own children. But he still gave us some of the best framing and strongest arguments in architecture for human freedom that anybody in history has ever given us, much stronger than Socrates or Plato would have produced. At the same time, Lincoln, for example, famously was dubious about whether African Americans could step up to full citizenship. But he wanted them to have the opportunity to prove him wrong, and they clearly have done that, exactly that. When African Americans have the same opportunities as everybody else, they perform like everybody else. We've mentioned before, I think that in my personal experience, by the way, almost all the African Americans I know are professors and physicians and people like that, because that's where my working life is.
Well, now, let me say that everybody's got to be given the chance to have personal fulfillment, to go as far as they possibly can. That's why I thought trade school, free trade school, would have been a great idea for the nation. But we're selfish human beings. And when Biden proposed that, and I championed it, people got really mad at me and said, I paid for college, why should I have a freebie? We're selfish by nature, and it's too bad.
Because a country full of skilled tradespeople would have a much stronger economy. And by the way, that would have been a great part of the antidote to the so-called masculinity crisis. Right now, young men are being taught that in order to feel like a man, you need to exert power over someone else. But I would argue that in order to feel like a man, you need to develop some competency that you can respect yourself for. And you're not strong because you can push someone down. You're strong when you can lift someone up. That would be my take on it. So young men who want to feel that they have a role as a man in the world, the way to get that role is to develop a competency. And it doesn't matter what it is. Be a guitar player in a band, be a plumber, be a doctor, be a lawyer, be a diesel mechanic, be a farmer. There are a lot of different ways to develop competency and contribute to the world and thus be valued. But beating up your wife, beating up people smaller than you, going to a mixed martial arts class and learning to be a tough guy won't accomplish any of that.
A man is a protector, not a dominator. The earth we are stewards of the earth, not prostitution of the earth, if you know what I mean. I see this whole idea of might makes right, and the press conference after Venezuela, after the Venezuela bombing, was all braggadocious bravado. It's phony. Look how tough I am. You didn't do it, and we paid for it. I think there needs to be a shift in our teaching of young men and women.
And so that brings us back actually to Pete and I. Our goal is not to tell you what to go think. Like, I don't want you to go home and say, oh, well, Coffee said this, it must be so. Or Pete said this, it must be so. What we want is to get you to let go of the stuff you're taking for granted right now and reassess it as if it were new information. If I told you without specifying a party that your next president would get his job by lying to you in utterly transparent ways, and you're going to fall for it, you'd be pretty angry at me. But it happened organically, we're in the middle of it, and you're like, yeah, it sounds all right to me. No, the things we believe most strongly are the things we need to look at most critically. And what we want is to open up, we want to begin discussions, not end them.
I said this before, and I'll reiterate it now. Conservatives are not bad people.
Right.
They're good, honest, hardworking people. There was an interview this week with the head of the Proud Boys, and it was really disturbing. If his views aren't disturbing enough, he says that at his age, and this guy's no spring chicken, he's never had sexual relations with a woman, doesn't expect that he will, pointed out very vehemently that he's not homosexual, but that women are hard to be around. And
yeah, you have to talk with them, you have to treat them like they're people. It's horrible.
Okay. The point being that conservatives are good people. Right-wingers are good people.
No, conservatives and right-wingers are not the same people. Right-wing populism is not conservatism.
That's true. But I think a lot of these people down deep are good, but they've been sold the bill of goods and they refuse to admit that it's just cruel. Cruelty is now in fashion. Did you ever think that would be possible in this country?
So I'm actually glad Pete and I are not on the same page on this. I think that if what you need to make you feel better about yourself is to put someone else down, then by definition, for me, you are not a good person.
Oh,
Pete
shut up.
is more all-encompassing on that. And good for him. But whether or not we go down that path, the notion that maggots and conservatives are the same is wrong. It's a gaslighting notion. If you look at what conservatives stand for, like regime change in other countries, violating states' rights by sending in federal troops whenever you don't like even how they vote, let alone other things that they do, applying the law differentially. These are things that conservatives would normally be up in arms about, but it snuck in on them over a period of time. And now conservatives have been hijacked by a group that is sabotaging everything they have ever stood for and wants to get rid of the Constitution. I'm begging you, conservatives, reclaim your power. And you cannot do that within the Republican Party. They're too corrupt now to save. Well, I don't even know if corrupt is the right word. They're so bottom feeding. They're erratic and chaotic and just aren't. There's no coherent party there.
Well, you get the last word because that's our last minute of time. We'll see you next time.
Score, last word.
I'm Pete Christensen.
And I'm Coffee Brown.
Remember,
Don't die dumb.